What's happening, all you minties? Uncanny Omar here from Near Mint Condition, the home of collected editions. And today, I get to do an overview of the 2022 printing of the new Teen Titans Omnibus Volume 1 by Marv Wolfman and George Perez from DC Comics. So, join me. And welcome back, everybody. Now, before getting started, I just want to remind everyone to smash that like button and subscribe and ring that bell for notifications. Seriously, if you're enjoying our videos, think about subscribing and get that little notification bell turned on. Lets you know when our videos are going live. Alright, what we have here is the latest printing of the new Teen Titans Omnibus Volume 1 from DC Comics. Now, this is the third printing of this book. The first printing came out well over 10 years ago, and then they decided to rebrand it with a brand new look and the exact same content with the addition of 4 extra pages, which is just an introduction by Marv Wolfman, and that came out in 2017. And that's what we're going to compare it to. So this is the 2017 version, this is the 2022 version. Like I said, there was an other version that had different colors, a different design for the spine. I actually like that sky blue. I used to have them, and you can see them on older videos that I've had. Alright, so no difference at all in the cover here. The front cover is identical from the original printing to the new printing. And keep in mind, both of these were printed in Canada at the exact same printer. So the DC logo, unlike Wonder Woman, is actually the same logo. Omnibus Volume 1 down at the bottom, even down to the little detail right here of the trademark, which you probably can't see, but believe me, it's the exact same thing. The colors are intact the exact same way. You have Corey right here flying up, the new Teen Titans Omnibus Volume 1, the exact same font, the DC logo down there, and of course, when talking about the contents of the book, actually, it's a little easier to read over here than they are here. It seems like they accidentally kept the bold lettering on. But let's check it out underneath the dust jacket. Oh, one thing I forgot to note is the creators, of course. Marv Wolfman, the legendary George Perez, who we lost earlier this year. Rest in peace. What a phenomenal artist. I did a video, a tribute to him before he passed away, talking about my favorite things to celebrate his life while he was still with us. And then Romeo Tangal up here underneath the dust jacket. I can't believe they're doing this, but it's the exact same thing. So it's this design, it's this black all around with the embossed new Teen Titans, and there's nothing on the back. The exact same thing over here in this new printing, the new Teen Titans Omnibus Volume 1 and the DC logo down at the bottom, nothing there. I honestly thought this was going to be different because they've done away with this particular look for a book. They usually put art on board, so it kind of surprises me that they decided to go back to this. Maybe it was because it was the same printer and they were like, hey, do the exact same thing that you did for the 2017 version. Print it exactly the same way, including the book itself. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to open this up, we're going to take a look at the artwork, talk a little bit about the stories, and then of course talk about the build of the book and compare it to the original printing if there's any differences at all. So let's go ahead and start that. Alright, so cracking this open, here's your black end paper, which is the exact same color that they used for the original printing. The design that you saw all over the dust jacket, the new Teen Titans Omnibus Volume 1. I will say it's really good to go back and revisit these because I never did an overview of Volume 1 that came out in 2017. I wasn't really doing many overviews of books. Back then I was mainly focused on old reader, new reader. So it's nice to go back and get to do some of these. So now they're on my channel on the playlist. But new Teen Titans Omnibus Volume 1, written by Marv Wolfman, art by George Perez and Romeo Tangal. You also have Dick Giordano, Kurt Swan, Carmine Infantino, Pablo Marcos, just legends in the comics field. And here you'll find when it was printed in the 2022 year. I don't know why I said in the 2022 year. Table of contents. There is a forward here, the same forward that you found in the 2017 version. and then where you're going to find each issue, when it was published, October 1980, what the title of that issue is, and again, what page you're going to find them. The book has 688 pages. Here's your introduction by Marv Wolfman, talking a little bit behind the scenes as to what inspired these stories, how they didn't really expect the stories to get canceled, but there was so much faith from editorial that they were like, okay, this book is going to work, we swear. As a matter of fact, we just looked at the first issue. Can you give us a special 15, 16 page little thing that we can put for free in the DC Comics Presents? Give it away to people as a trial little, almost, I don't want to say ash can, but it feels almost like a preview of what's to come. And Wolfman was like, yeah, that's never been done before. So him and George got together and put this little 15-page preview, special Teen Titans preview right here, introducing these characters that will forever change comics for DC. So this collects that particular preview, or I guess material, from the DC Comics Presents number 26, New Teen Titans issues 1 through 20, as well as Tales of the New Teen Titans issues 1 through 4. It's a 4-issue miniseries. So this is where it all began. 1980. And here are your characters of Starfire, Raven, Wonder Girl, Kid Flash, Robin, Changeling, and Cyborg. Now, some of these characters had already been established in the DC Universe. Some of them had even been Teen Titans, like these three right here. But these three, Starfire, Raven, and Cyborg, were new characters. And Changeling, later on known as Beast Boy, was of course part of the Doom Patrol. So here is where they first team up. Here is where they first meet. And they gather forces together to become the Teen Titans. They give each other a little bit of a background about themselves and how they fight the opposing forces. I love this particular origin story for the Teen Titans, because I used to have the Silver Age Omnibus, and I read the whole thing. It just didn't stay in my library because I wasn't a big fan of it. I didn't have any attachment to it. And then later on, they tried to relaunch the line, but this is 1980. Now, keep in mind, this is before Crisis on Infinite Earths. And if you watch my channel, you know that I'm not the biggest fan of pre-DC Crisis, but I do have some exceptions. This being a strong one. I love this stuff from beginning to end. As a matter of fact, this stuff wasn't really affected by Crisis on Infinite Earths. But here we're introduced to a character that we think, in issue number 1, by the way, a character that we think is going to be the big villain. I love the setup, and that is Grant Wilson. Now, Grant Wilson, of course, that last name may be familiar to some of you. It's actually the son of Slade Wilson, who is, of course, better known as Deathstroke, the Terminator. Now, Grant was introduced in issue number 1 as this really messed up boyfriend of one of the character's roommates, and he comes back in issue number 2, yeah, right here, having a big fight with her, and he's like, come on, Carol, you gotta take me back. And she's like, no, Grant, I've had enough. And then, of course, the Teen Titans come in. So he makes a threat against her and the Teen Titans, saying, hey, I'm gonna come back. So that leads you to believe, if you're reading this for the first time, of course, back then, because I think everything's been ruined by now because of, well, this has had an incarnation of TV shows and also cartoons. Actually, 2 cartoon incarnations. And we know that he's not the big player. As a matter of fact, whoa, man, paydays. Thank you, sir. My goodness, Donna. Woo, son, what the hell am I talking about? Okay, yes, Grant. Deathstroke doesn't introduce himself as his father. He's like, oh my gosh, you're Deathstroke the Terminator. The Hive gave me powers, and he's just trying to tell him, look, you don't want to overuse those powers. You're going to get killed if you keep doing it. And of course, he doesn't listen to his father, not knowing it's his father behind the mask. They go and fight the Teen Titans, and sure enough, yeah, he ends up getting killed on his first mission, which makes Slade Wilson promise that he will come back and get revenge for the death of his son, even though it was his son's own fault, and really the Hive that made that happen. So here he is with Wintergreen visiting his son's grave. I love that introduction. It's so cool. Because you were led to believe that Grant Wilson was going to be the big player, and he was known as the Ravager, and then years later we had other Ravagers. But Man, what a twist right there. Not to quote M. Night Shyamalan, but here we have the return of Dr. Light. Now, Dr. Light in this is going to be joined by 4 new characters of Simon, the character known as Gizmo. This is Shimmer and her brother Mammoth. And all of them will become the Fearsome Five. And then you start seeing some background stories to some of our newer characters. You start to see Corey actually start to speak English, and you start to see a little bit of her background, where she came from. You start to see Cyborg's backup story. Issue number 4, I think it's the one with the Justice League, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, the Justice League comes in. All of this drawn by George Perez, except for a couple of issues, including the next one. Yeah, issue number 5 right here, which really kicks off, actually issue 4 really kicks off a little bit of the background of Raven. But this one is drawn by the legendary Kurt Swan. And as a matter of fact, in the introduction, Marv Wolfman talks about, if it's the same introduction from 2017, talks about his love of Kurt Swan and Carmine Infantino, who he did a little backup story here. But this introduces us to Trigon right here, his relations to Raven, where she came from, and regarded as, you know, one of the best stories from the very beginning of the Teen Titans. Now, this is crazy because I enjoyed these so much that I know most people probably talk about stories like the Judas Contract, which is top tier. Like, that is endgame for a lot of people as far as, like, the best of the best Teen Titans story. But this is, to me, was just as fun and good. And what made it work for me, I'm going to just flip through here while I talk a little bit more about the stories. Make sure I don't get into spoilers, even though these stories are from 1980. What did it for me is that Wolfman gave these characters the same treatment that Chris Claremont gave the X-Men. As a matter of fact, that's a pretty accurate description, because this title was selling just as much, if not better at times, than Uncanny X-Men. This was the rival title. When X-Men was at its peak of selling comics monthly, this was the rival title over at DC Comics. So much so that the two had that big crossover with the Dark Phoenix and Darkseid. Oh, it's so good. But my point was that... have I gotten to issue number 8? Oh, yeah. My point was that what made it work, it was the same thing that Claremont did. He humanized the characters. He gave them relatable background stories. He made you feel for these characters. And it all really comes to play here in A Day in the Lives. And what a day it is. I love this story. So here you follow each of the characters and what's going on in their everyday life. There's no supervillains here. There's no deaths. There's no threats from outer space. It's just the characters and what they're doing on a daily basis in one particular day. I love this conversation between Garth and Vic right here. So Vic, actually, this is so heartbreaking. He goes and sees his girlfriend, and he lets her know about the accident that he's had and how he became this cyborg. And she's like, Victor, I'm sorry. Like, this isn't going to work. And, man, Mercy, that was so damn cold. But then, right after leaving her apartment, he goes and confronts this little boy that accidentally hits him with a ball at the park. And the little boy's not really threatened by him. Whereas Mercy here was. Oh, I thought that was so cute. And just so relatable, because during this time he thinks of himself as a monster. And then he gets to meet this Sarah right here. Sarah. That's the teacher. Oh yeah. Then George Perez curves. I love the fact that Wally, it has such a strong family, like his mom and dad. Corey actually meets somebody that she falls for. That issue alone just kind of summarizes exactly what made this particular comic work. And that is that these characters became so relatable. Even though they're out there fighting crime, even though they're out there fighting supervillains, that's the stuff that made this book shine. And here we have the return of Deathstroke, the Terminator, coming back. And I'm so glad that they did that. I mean, they waited until this particular issue. So almost a year after introducing him, they waited to use him again. And this also features the return of the Doom Patrol. This is the story with Hyperion right here. In the introduction, I love this, that Marv Wolfman talked about how the Teen Titans gave him an opportunity to write all kinds of stories. If he wanted to do a horror-based story, he had the character of Raven to go and focus on. If he wanted to do sci-fi, he had the character of Starfire. Mythology, Donna Troy, and man, what a complicated story she had. Then, of course, you have the tech stuff with Vic. If he wanted to tell a fun story, even though he, oh my gosh, aggravated the living piss out of me, Garth, to this day, still going back and rereading those stories, I was never a Changeling fan. I think there were a couple of issues later on that show up that I'm like, okay, he's growing on me, but I could, oh my gosh. If he wanted to tell a detective story, he would write about Robin. And I thought that was a really smart thing to focus on. You know, what a way to tell these particular different stories for your audience and just keep them hooked. I love this right here. This is a wonderful dedication to what came before, and that is, of course, Arnold Drake's Doom Patrol. And he was a big fan of it. He wanted to bring back the Doom Patrol, and DC editorial was like, no, you shouldn't. Oh, Corey, what a gorgeous lady. You shouldn't be bringing the Doom Patrol. I don't think it's going to work for DC at this moment. And he was like, no, let me show you. So he wrote that particular story about bringing them back. Well, in a way. But these are the early stories. This is the return, if I'm not mistaken, of the original Starfire. Yeah, this character right here. Because you demanded it, the return of the original Starfire. Was there really a demand for this guy to return? The only thing I wish they had collected with this particular collection are the letter pages. I wish they had started doing letter pages back then, or even include them in this particular reprint. This is a beautiful story right here. It's just Wally West writing his mom and dad. Remember when I said about him just having a strong family? Writing his mom and dad a letter about the latest adventures. Oh, you get to find out who built the Titans Tower. And that actually wraps up this particular issue, issue number 20, the one with Wally West. Now, here we have the Tales of the Titans. But before I talk about that, I love when creators write themselves into books. So you have, especially when Marv meets Corey right here. He's like, hi, I'm Marv. I'm a writer. And Corey's like, I'm Starfire. I'm a superhero. You're gorgeous. I love that both Marv Wolfman and George Perez are written into this little backup story at the end of this issue with Wally West. Now, we get the 4 issues right here of the Tales of the Teen Titans, featuring the origin of these particular characters. Again, George Perez now being billed as the co-writer of these stories. So not only is he the artist, but he's also the co-plotter. Here's the story of Raven going into her particular origin. And then we get Changeling. Again, this is when Garth was known as Changeling. Garfield Logan. Boy, this dude really aggravated me. I love this stuff, though. Because, I mean, you always have to have a character that, you know, other people find funny, and you're like, I don't think that guy's funny at all. And here is the origin of Starfire. Again, George Perez, credited as co-plotter. The one thing I didn't mention, though, and of course, I turned to the page with Kurt Swan. Here, let me go back to these pages right here. It's the Return of the Puppeteer. Is that Romeo Tangal is the inker for most of this book. He inked a lot of George Perez's book, which is why he gets top billing at the beginning of this omnibus. Now, all the way in the back are the pinups, like Robin the Teen Wonder, and Kid Flash, Wonder Girl, Cyborg, Raven, Changeling, Starfire. You can read it. I don't know why I'm reading it. Here's the layout to the Titans Tower. And the afterword, right here by Marv Wolfman, I believe. Yeah, from 1999. This was in the archives. And honestly, these early stories, I never got... I had the first appearance of Deathstroke because I thought he was really cool. And I had Teen Titans #1 growing up. But I never had other issues until... later on, I ended up getting the trade paperbacks, not the archives. I missed out on those, but I ended up getting the trades, and that was the first time I read a lot of those issues. So that issue number 8, that was the first time I read it, was in trade paperback. Now, later on in the 80s, I did start getting huge into DC, so I started getting, especially the late 80s, I started getting back issues of a lot of those new Teen Titan back issues. But the trade paperbacks and Omnis, thank God they're here because there were some that I was missing from my collection. Alright, let's look at the binding and then we'll do a comparison to the 2017 printing. Here is what the eye looks like, and again, 688 pages. Sewn binding. So, not much of an eye, but also it lays over pretty good, honestly. The back of the book right there. Now let's quickly do just a little comparison in the colors and paper stock. Here's the free preview, and absolutely no difference at all, even in color. I'm used to sometimes the newer printings having the colors a little faded out, or a little more vibrant, a little darker. I can't see a difference at all. The colors are identical, no matter what page I'm turning it to. So let's check out the middle of the book. Here's page 209, from the original to the new. Really quickly, the original's binding, and this is because I've read it over and over again, or the 2017 binding. This is what the eye looks like, for those that are comparing. It's a big eye, and it's printed at the same place. Let's, So up at the top is the original printing, down at the bottom is the new printing, and the thing you're going to notice the most is just a little minor gutter loss in the new printing compared to the original printing, just because of that eye. It really does go a long way. But that, as they say, is that. If you're interested in purchasing this book, don't forget to check out our sponsors. If you live in Europe and are interested in buying and pre-ordering Omnis, then you should definitely check out Walt's Comic Shop in Berlin, Germany. They have the cheapest pre-order prices for Marvel and DC books within the EU, flat rate shipping of €12 for all EU countries, bulletproof packaging, and all emails will be answered within 24 hours. They offer a huge selection of out-of-print books. Just head over to waltscomicshop.com for more great deals and rare titles. And for a limited time, you can use the code nearmintcon, all one word at the checkout, to get free shipping for all EU countries with your first order of over €40. Walt's Comic Shop, your reliable source for Omnis and premium collected editions in Europe. This episode is brought to you by cheapgraphicnovels.com, your online home for graphic novels and collected editions up to 50% off cover price. They have excellent shipping and prompt and helpful service. Check out their bargain deals for up to 90% off cover price. And don't forget, the CGN also takes pre-orders. That way you don't miss out on the hottest releases. And they are currently running a special promotion for you Minties. If you're a first-time customer, after receiving your order confirmation email, reply back to that email and let them know Near Mint Condition sent you their way. They will then apply a free shipping promotional credit to your next order in the US. Cheap Graphic Novels, your source for the hottest books with the kind of deep discount, quality shipping, and customer service that will keep you coming back for more. And that was the content, the page count, and of course comparison to the first printing, which is actually the second printing, the 2017 printing. But yeah, let me know in the comments down below if you missed out on it the first time, if this is your first time reading these classic stories, what your favorite Teen Titans story is. I would love to know all that in the comments down below. Don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe, and ring that bell for notifications to let you know when our videos are going live. We are on Spreadshop and Patreon. Amazing ways to support the channel if you can do so. And more importantly, all of you stay healthy and safe out there. Much love.